Let me say something the world doesn't like to hear. Some governments only understand pressure. After the U.S. strike on Kaduna, I looked at Nigeria and I said, enough. You have 24 hours to release Nnamdi Kanu. Not tomorrow, not after excuses now. What's really happening to him isn't justice, it's containment. You didn't jail a man, you stored a problem and hoped the world wouldn't notice. But I notice. He became a symbol because you made him one.
Hey you, yes you watching right now. Before you scroll, answer this honestly. Where are you watching from and what made you stop? This channel isn't here to waste your time. Every like tells the algorithm this conversation matters. Every comment keeps it alive. Every share decides how far it travels. If you're watching from Africa, Europe, America, or anywhere else, type it below. Let people see how global this moment is. Like this video. Share it with someone who thinks deeply.
Are you watching because you want the truth or because you're afraid of it? Do you believe power answers to law or does law answer to power? And if a man becomes a symbol, who is really being held prisoner? Let me say something the world doesn't like to hear. Some governments only understand pressure. I've seen it my whole life. I've dealt with it in business, I've dealt with it in politics, and I've dealt with it on the world stage. Nice words don't move steel doors. Strong statements do. After what just happened in Kaduna, after the shockwaves, the confusion, the silence, I looked at Nigeria and I said enough. Enough pretending. Enough delays. Enough legal theater. You have 24 hours to release Nnamdi Kanu. Not tomorrow. Not after another committee meeting. Not after another excuse. Now. People ask why. They say, why this man? Why now? Why speak so loudly? I'll tell you why. Because what is happening to him is not justice. It has not been justice for a long time. It is containment. It is storage. It is the quiet locking away of a problem so leaders can sleep at night and tell the world everything is under control. But problems don't disappear because you lock a door. They ferment. They grow. They become symbols. And when a man becomes a symbol, the cell holding him becomes smaller than the idea he represents. Nnamdi Kanu is a Biafran. He is indigenous people of Biafra. That alone tells you why this case is not simple. This is not about one man shouting into a microphone. This is about history that never healed. Borders that were stitched together with force. Promises that were never honored. And governments that learned it was easier to silence voices than to listen to them. For years, Nigeria has told the world this is a legal matter. Court this. Procedure that. But law without fairness is just paper. And paper burns easily when pressure is applied. Let's talk about what's really happening recently. Not the headlines. Not the official statements, the truth underneath. Nigeria is under strain. Economic pressure. Security pressure. Internal fractures that are no longer whispers but open cracks. Kaduna didn't happen in a vacuum. Nothing ever does. When force enters the picture, diplomacy changes tone. Suddenly conversations that were impossible become urgent. Suddenly prisoners are remembered. Suddenly court rulings matter again. That's not coincidence. That's leverage. What happened to Nnamdi Kanu is that he stopped being just a detainee and became a bargaining chip. Every government does it. Some admit it. Some don't. When unrest grows, when international eyes turn sharp, certain names rise to the surface. His name is one of them. Not because he is the only one suffering, not because others don't deserve justice, but because symbols travel faster than facts, and symbols scare governments that depend on silence. You didn't jail a man. You stored a problem and hoped the world wouldn't notice. You hoped time would dull the edges. You hoped fatigue would set in. You hoped his supporters would fracture, lose interest, move on. But history doesn't work that way. Suppressed movements don't vanish. They adapt. They go underground. They go online. They spread across borders. And eventually they knock on doors you didn't expect. Big doors. International doors. I notice. America notices. Not because we are saints. Not because we pretend to be perfect. But because instability doesn't respect borders. When a region burns slowly, the smoke travels. Investors notice. Allies notice. Rivals notice. And suddenly what you called an internal matter becomes a global concern. That's when clocks appear. That's when deadlines get set. People say this is interference. I say it's consequence. Sovereignty is not a shield you hide behind while violating your own foundations. Sovereignty comes with responsibility. When courts issue orders and governments ignore them, sovereignty weakens. When detention stretches beyond reason, legitimacy erodes. When dialogue is replaced with force, authority shrinks. You can't claim strength while fearing one voice. Let's be clear about something. This is not about liking Nnamdi Kanu. This is not about agreeing with everything he has ever said. Leaders don't get that luxury. This is about recognizing when a situation has crossed from governance into obsession. When a state spends more energy silencing a man than addressing why people listen to him, that state has already lost something valuable: trust. What is really happening to him is psychological warfare, isolation, uncertainty, the slow grind designed to break resolve without creating a martyr. But that strategy only works when the world isn't watching. And the world is watching now. Watching closely. Watching not just Nigeria, but how Africa is treated, how dissent is handled, how old wounds are managed in a modern age that no longer tolerates quiet disappearances. The indigenous people of Biafra movement did not come from nowhere. It grew from grievances left unresolved since the end of a war that was never truly ended in the hearts of those who lived through it. You can ban an organization, you can label it, you can arrest leaders, but you cannot ban memory, you cannot outlaw identity, you cannot jail history. Kaduna was a message, whether intended or not, a message that pressure has arrived, that the era of pretending everything is fine is over, and when pressure arrives, choices must be made. You can escalate or you can de-escalate. You can release or you can resist, but every choice has a cost. The cost of resistance is isolation. The cost of delay is instability. The cost of release is conversation, and conversation is what has been avoided for far too long. When I put 24 hours on the table, it wasn't theater, it was clarity. Deadlines clarify priorities. They strip away excuses. They reveal what matters and what doesn't. If a government truly believes it is acting lawfully, release should not be feared. Courts have spoken. Detention continues. That contradiction is loud, louder than any speech Nnamdi Kanu has ever given. Some will say this emboldens separatists. Others will say it weakens the state. I say the opposite. A confident state does not fear dialogue. A strong nation does not tremble at dissent. Strength is not measured by how long you can hold someone, but by how fairly you can release them and still stand.
But no civilian
Think carefully
casualties
about
was
the
recorded.
timing. Think about
Director
why
General
now.
of Media and
Think about
Publicity,
why,
Government
after
House
years of
Sokoto
silence,
State, Abubakar
pressure
Bawa,
suddenly
in a
mounts.
statement said the
It is
impact
because the
could not
cost
be
of
immediately
holding him has
determined
become higher
as they
than the
await
cost of letting
assessment
him
of the
go.
joint operations.
That is the truth.
The statement
Governments
explains
rarely
that the
admit.
circumstances of the
Detention was
object
supposed to
found in a
stabilize.
location near
Instead,
Jabo Town
it
in Tambuwal local
destabilized.
government
It
area
hardened
could not
positions.
also be
It
immediately
internationalized
explained
the issue.
as the
It
outcome of
turned a domestic
analysis by
dispute
Nigeria,
into a
U.S.
global
military
talking
authorities
point.
is being
This
awaited.
is what happens when
The state
leadership
government
chooses
therefore
short-term
called on
quiet over
residents of
long-term
affected
peace.
areas to
Silence looks
continue to
attractive.
cooperate
It feels
with
safe.
both the federal and
But
state
silence
governments
rots.
by
It
providing
creates
useful
parallel
information
narratives,
to security
underground
agencies
movements,
in order to
distrust,
sustain
and eventually
ongoing efforts
confrontation.
to restore
Release
lasting
does not
peace
solve
and
everything,
security.
but continued detention solves nothing. I am not speaking here as a friend or an enemy. I am speaking as someone who understands power dynamics, who understands that pressure reveals reality. And the reality is this: Nnamdi Kanu's continued detention is no longer about law. It is about fear of what comes next, fear of conversation, fear of acknowledging that the Nigerian project, like many post-colonial states, still has unfinished business. You cannot bomb ideas. You cannot detain grievances. You cannot arrest a question. The question at the heart of this is simple. Can a diverse nation confront its internal fractures honestly, or will it keep applying force and calling it unity? History tells us how that ends. America doesn't whisper when human rights become bargaining chips. We don't, because whispers get ignored. We put a clock on the table and let it tick. Not because we enjoy pressure, but because pressure is sometimes the only language left. And when that clock runs out, the consequences are no longer theoretical. Release does not mean surrender. Release means confidence. It means believing your nation is strong enough to survive open discussion. It means trusting that justice does not require cages to prove itself. It means choosing the difficult path of engagement over the easy path of repression. What is happening recently is a reckoning, not just for Nigeria. For many nations built on unresolved compromises, the world is changing. Information moves faster than suppression. Narratives escape borders. And leaders who cling to old methods find themselves cornered by new realities. Nnamdi Kanu will walk out of detention eventually. That is inevitable. The only question is when and at what cost. Released now, he becomes part of a political conversation. Released later, he becomes something else entirely. History has shown this again and again. Governments that delay justice often manufacture their own crises. This moment is not about saving face. It is about saving the future. Because every day he remains detained, the story grows darker. Every delay feeds suspicion. Every excuse confirms what critics already believe, that the system is afraid. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Fear is not strength. Control is not stability. And silence is not peace. Peace requires courage. Courage to admit mistakes. Courage to listen. Courage to release.
Thank you very much.
The clock is ticking not because
much
America
appreciated.
said so, but because reality demands it. The world has moved past the age where power alone defines
mind
legitimacy. Legitimacy
making
now
this
comes
speech
from
without a
transparency,
teleprompter,
fairness,
because
and
the
the willingness to
teleprompter
confront
is not working.
uncomfortable truths. This is not the end of a story. It is
I
the
feel
beginning of
very
a harder
happy to be up
chapter.
here with you,
One where
nevertheless.
Nigeria must
And
decide
that
whether
way
it
you
wants
speak
unity enforced by
more from
force
the
or
heart.
unity built through
I can only
justice.
say
One where
that
leaders
whoever's
must
operating
choose
this